Coming up on episode 101 of the Behind the Back podcast, it's our NFC prediction podcast. So we're starting off this one as a two-parter because we spent too much time recording on this one. We don't want to give you guys a 2-hour pod here. So we're starting with the NFC East and the NFC West, our divisions. Who do we think is going to finish first, second, third, or fourth? Guys, we have some hot takes here. We definitely get into a little bit of a discussion here on the pod about a couple of teams here. So please stay tuned if you're interested in the NFC East, NFC West, guys. With that being said, y'all, let's get it. All right. Welcome back to another episode of the Behind the Back podcast. We are your host. I am Marcos Conan Negron, and beside me here, as always, is Ben, the Jet. Reds, Ben, second weekend here. How we feeling?
I'm hoping that the audio is better. We spent all weekend long perfecting this or trying to perfect this, and so we're giving it our best college shot here.
Yeah, part of the learning process, you guys. We really appreciate all you guys, who listen to our episode 100 special and who joined us on the journey that we have here in this new studio that we're in. Yeah, so like Ben said, hopefully we fix this audio here so it sounds a lot better, a lot less echo and distortion here. But I think we got this, guys. It's just, we're all growing together here. So this week, it's NFC. We're doing NFC playoff predictions, regular season predictions, records, and then the playoffs as well. But we're going to have this episode break up into two parts. So we are recording on Wednesday, August 27th. Episode's going to come out Thursday, part one. We're going to be talking about the NFC East and the NFC West, as you guys heard in the intro. And then after that, we're going to have part two be the NFC South, NFC North, and then our playoff predictions and finish off our predictions week that way. So let's go right into it. Ben, like we did last week, we're going to go through our divisions. And now this is more fun because these are our divisions. The AFC, we went through all these teams that, do we really believe in all these teams that we're talking about here? So let's, try and defend our teams and talk about our divisions here. So we're going to start with the NFC West, home of the San Francisco 49ers, of course. I will let you do the honors of giving your records for your four teams.
All right, so to win the NFC West, I've got the 49ers at 11-6. I've got the Rams coming in second at 10-7. I've got the Seahawks behind that at 9-8. And I've got the Cardinals at the bottom at 7-10. So that was kind of how it shook down for me. I don't know how yours did.
So we had semi-similar. I had the Niners higher, but we'll talk about that in a second. I had the Niners first at 12-5. And then I had the Seattle Seahawks at 8-9, the Rams at 8-9, and the Cardinals at 7-10.
You don't believe in this division at all?
No, I don't think that it is. Okay, so I don't think it's a lack of belief in the division. I think it's a belief in the division that I don't think any team in this division is truly separating themselves this year. I think everyone's really high on the Rams, as they should be, but we can talk about those guys in a little bit. But I know that I had the Cardinals at 7-10, and I don't believe this was kind of like a casualty one for me because I've always been, I always kind of like the Cardinals a little bit, semi-frisky. But
we say that every year.
So I think 7-10 is their floor. I think that this team, if everything fell their way, I think they have, and everyone stays healthy, I think they have enough talent offensively with Murray, Connor, and then you have Marvin Harrison Jr., Michael Wilson, Trey McBride. I know they have a couple other guys they like. They're like Dortcher, whoever. I think that's a guy on there too. But they have weapons there. And I kind of buy into, they've never really had defensive weapons. I know Walter Nolan, I was really high in on the draft, the rookie out of Ole Miss, but he's going to start on the PUP list. So I know he's going to be out the first 4 weeks. But Will Johnson, I really like that corner coming out of Michigan, coming out of the draft. And he fell because he had an injury concern, but he played all the camp, played through it. And kind of like Jahad Campbell, I guess it was the Cardinals kind of already knew that they, where he was going to be. So I see him making an impact. So I think that'll be, they have potential. They don't have depth. I think if Trey McBride goes down, I think that, Marvin Harrison goes down, then the questions really become how did this team really produce? Kyler hasn't really produced in his career. One playoff trip in his 6 years here. You know, everyone memes him for the Call of Duty guy. His game really dips once that new one comes out. So keep an eye on Black Ops 7. That's coming out soon. So
What is that? It's like November?
yeah, it's coming out soon. Like pretty soon here. That's usually when it happens. It's like the week 7, week 8 decline. But so that's from, you know, from an outsider perspective, how I feel about the Cardinals. I think that I don't know how much I believe in Gannon either. There is a lot of you have to prove it first, but they're always a fun team to watch or going into the season, but then it always ends up kind of not working out for them.
Well, and that's kind of where I'm at. Like, you can look at this team and say this is a potential dark horse team, you know, for a playoff spot. You can look at this team and think, you know, they've got all the pieces necessary to, you know, not necessarily win the division, but make things interesting, and they could sneak into the playoffs. The problem is we've been saying that about the Cardinals now for a bunch of years, and they've had pieces similar to this before, not necessarily to, you know, the level or necessarily with the style of future that they're kind of gunning for here, but they've had really good pieces in the past, and they still had come up short. So a lot of that falls, like you said, on Kyler, and you got to question at this point, you know, is Kyler's ceiling, have we seen all that we've seen out of Kyler? Is there another level to him? These are the questions like I sit here and ask myself every year with the Cardinals, and I am consistently validated when I realize that, yeah, they're still the mid team that they've been. They didn't have a bad offseason, right? They added some pieces to their defense. Jonathan Gannon has been doing a decent job with the team in general. Last year, you know, they were average in just about every category. So in terms of regression, I don't think they're going to be a worse team this year. But you know, the biggest acquisition for their team this offseason was Josh Sweat. And, you know, that in and of itself is kind of a question mark. Can he stay healthy all season long? You know, is he going to be fully locked in? Like, what does this team look like week 14? You know, what does his mentality look like week 14 if they're completely down the gutter, right? So it's an interesting team. I think they'll be semi-fun to watch at times. They can absolutely have a floor of like 10-7, or sorry, a ceiling of 10-7. That's kind of where I see their ceiling at. Their floor is, to me, I think 6-11. And again, I have them 7-10 as well. So it's not quite at their floor, but it's the expectation that I expect now out of this Cardinals team every single year.
Yeah, I think for the Cardinals, I think for those who want to be optimistic on them, they did finish the year 6-3. They were finishing on playing better football, I would say. And yes, Josh Sweat being in their main acquisition is going to be interesting because, you know, the Eagles were totally okay with letting him go altogether last season before he came back on a restructured deal. And he really did get to live up of the hype of performing in the Super Bowl. But during the season, he was putting up all right numbers, but he wasn't that sack guy from 2022 either. So it will be an interesting thing now that he's gotten paid now, but he's in Jonathan Gannon's system. He's familiar. So it is something he's already used to. So he knows what his role is going to be there. And they added Calais Campbell too. They're trying to go the veteran route to try to, you know, help these young guys too. But you're right. How sustainable is it? Will they be able to consistently play? And I guess the gamble for them would be maybe this is the year that they finally can put some of it together. And I think that there's enough talent to at least make them competitive each and every game. And they hung around when they shouldn't have in a few spots last year. So I think there's potential for them to, if things swing their way, they can hit their ceiling.
Yeah. And I think for me, you know, I'm looking at their schedule. In terms of away games, they play the Cowgirls, they see the Texans, the Bucks, the Bengals. You know, those are probably the hardest games. Their home games they see the Packers, the Jaguars, and the Falcons. So their schedule isn't bad, and they have an opportunity to kind of make some noise off of that. But again, it's kind of like this is going to be the team that suffers everybody's predictions in fourth place until you can kind of prove otherwise. I mean, this is the team that's finished last or close to for a bunch of years now. So until you prove otherwise, this is kind of where we're going to put you.
That's true. I think, and last point on them, I think that they do it for their advantage. They do have a +7 rest advantage. So that's top 6 in the league. So the schedule will benefit them a little bit this time around. So maybe that keeps guys healthier. Who knows? But you know, just those little things. Maybe it's the margins this year that helps them out. But I guess we'll see. So let's talk about your probably one of your favorite teams to talk about, the Seattle Seahawks. And, they had a lot of changes, right? So now we got Sammy D in the building, and obviously DK is gone. And, they have Mike McDonald's been there for year 2 now. So what do you think? I had him 8-9, and would you have him again?
I have a 9-8. So we're ballpark. For me, there's a lot of new pieces on this team, and there's new pieces that came from teams who were in much better shape. And I'm kind of pointing at Sam Darnold right now. If you expect Sam Darnold to play the same level behind an O-line that is considerably worse than what it was in the Vikings, like, to me, I just don't see that, and I can't agree with anybody who thinks that. I look at Sam Darnold's play. I think he's a good quarterback. He benefited greatly from having one of the best receivers in the league last season and one of the best offensive lines in football last season. On top of that scheme that he was playing behind made anything to do with his job super easy. This is a new scheme. This is a new team. This O-line I don't believe in whatsoever. But, bringing in Cooper Kupp, DeMarcus Lawrence, Ernest Jones, drafting Gray Zabel, it's, while they improved the O-line in some ways, it's still not a good enough O-line. And that to me is where I'm like sitting here, and I'm kind of afraid that Sam might be played as the overrated quarterback in this division this year. And again, I like Sam, but I think this situation isn't going to necessarily benefit him. And I think that to me is a lot of the reason why I just don't really buy into this Seahawks team that much. I think, you're always going to have that great home field advantage in Lumen Field, but I look at some of their schedule. I look at some of the, again, these new pieces is just what I end up coming back to. Like, it's a new team. It's going to take time to mesh. I don't know if they have time to mesh, because you see a lot of these guys in a lot of your division early on.
I think the thing with them too is that they are really, especially on their skill positions, they are very top heavy. And if JSN or Cooper Kupp go down, then you're really looking at guys like Jake Bobo, who also is out with a concussion right now. Like, your tight end room is relying on a rookie in Elijah Arroyo right now. It is an interesting spot for Sam Darnold. I do think that, like, scheme wise, his new offensive coordinator Clint Kubiak is, from the Shanahan tree to an extent. It is, we're starting to get down there in terms of the Shanahan tree and how deep the roots go nowadays. But I think that it won't be so unfamiliar, but it will be a question of, I think, if Sam's going to be successful at all, they're going to have to get the ball out of his hands quick and hopefully be able to run the ball well enough to, take some of the pressure off him and maybe utilize some play action. I know they have Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet, and hopefully those guys, and again, it's just a team that, can they stay healthy? I believe in their defense. I believe in Mike McDonald as a defensive coach. And, one of the, few schemes that seems to bother your young QB, but not last year. I mean, obviously first year, different players, but I think that, like, there is a path to Mike McDonald to maybe in the second year be able to coach these guys up even better. And you still have awesome pieces like Devin Witherspoon. You have Rick Woolen, and obviously the front line with, what is it, Dexter Lawrence and DeMarcus Lawrence. DeMarcus Lawrence, and I forget who that other big, Leonard Williams. That's the other guy. So it's like, they have pieces, but I also don't believe in them that much either. I think that Sam Darnold has a ceiling. I'm afraid that it takes one injury and then this team's gonna kind of fall apart. So
yeah, and I mean, they were top 15 in almost every category defensively last year. But the problem was you weren't elite at any one thing. And that still kind of applies defensively for them. And I think defense is where they're going to need to win a lot of games this season, especially early on as this offense kind of finds its rhythm. So, if I had to give like a ceiling to this team, I would say honestly, it's going to be big. I would say it's 11-6. I think I could see them getting 11 wins, but health has to be perfect. Not perfect, but you have to have a good amount of health. You have to be meshing pretty early on, and you need to go on a run. And that's like, you have to have all three of those things really, going for you if you want to hit that 11 win. Otherwise, I see this team as like a floor of like 7-10, And again, I have them 9-8. So I don't have them going at their floor. I have them going somewhere right in between. But we'll see.
Yeah, and I think a side note, I think they're going to be showing packages of Jalen Milrow, and so they're going to have specific packages for him, a la 2020 Jalen Hurts. So maybe another quarterback who's better with his legs, coming out of Alabama, shows a little bit of potential here in the NFC West. Definitely a player I'm keeping an eye on.
It doesn't benefit the 49ers, I'll tell you that. We struggle with those quarterbacks who have that mobility. All the games against Kyler Murray, that's always a factor. And if you're rolling Milrow out in packages that feature him using his legs, I think this Niners team could find some struggles with that. So that'll be interesting. I like their package idea though.
Yeah, because I think it's a good way. Milrow obviously knows he's not going to be the starter, but there is a good chance that he could be the future. They took a early enough pick on him to see and let him develop behind Sam Darnold, and that's why Darnold got the 3-year deal. So, Sam Darnold, this is going to be kind of your last big paycheck, last big payday, or at least last chance to earn one. So, this is whatever happens here will define the rest of his career here. So I think that, Milrow being in this spot and getting reps and getting practice reps basically is going to benefit him in the long run.
100%. So let's talk about the Rams here before we talk about the Niners. The Rams came up just short against the Eagles last year. A lot of people would argue that it was, a play short of beating the Philadelphia Eagles.
That's what they say.
That's
what I'm hearing, man.
I'm gonna start it off hot, man. This Stafford back injury, it's nothing at this point. It's more than something. It's something you got to kind of pay attention to. And if the Rams have to lean on Jimmy G for any length of time, while I love to defend him while he was a 49er, I see now exactly the quarterback he is when he's not a part of a system that benefits him. I don't think this season would be very successful if Jimmy gets a consistent amount of run with this team. Now, they've got good pieces around, the quarterback position. So running the football is going to be a big factor for them this season. Blake Corum hasn't worked out, but he could still shape out depending on his utilization. Obviously, Devontae Adams is the big story, replacing Cooper Kupp. It was a good move. I mean, if you were going to replace Kupp with anybody, that was the guy to do it with. And I know, both guys are in their older years in the NFL, veterans for sure. But Devontae hasn't regressed, really. And as long as Jimmy G isn't throwing him hospital balls like he was in the Raiders in training camp, he'll be just fine. So it's not a terrible schedule. They see teams like the Texans, the Bucks, the Lions at home. Away they see the Eagles and the Ravens. I'm going to get your opinion here on this team, but for me, like a floor for them, 8-9, ceiling of 12-5. And I have them again somewhere in between at 10-7.
Yeah, I think early in the offseason, post playoffs, it was easy to say this team was one play away, potentially one Jalen Carter disruptive play away from beating the Eagles in the snow. And I think that this whole offseason they kind of been coasting off of that success when it comes to all these like rankings and where they're going to be in the season. There are a lot of people's trendy pick to go to the Super Bowl in the NFC. So I think that the Rams on paper, everything looks good. And now we take the Stafford injury seriously now that it's lingered all the way to week 1. And McVay, just at the end of the day, based off of what's been reported and how he's talked about it, it just seems like he thought it was under control now, and then it wasn't. And now it's turned into, oh, he's good to go, he'll be ready week 1, to it's something we're going to have to monitor all year. So it's like the ceiling is met if he's healthy. Potentially. They have that potential. Because their offense is awesome. I do think that I think they will reap the benefits of Adams and Nacua over Kupp and Nacua, because I think Kupp and Nacua served similar skill sets. And I think that Devontae is a completely different receiver and allows a different style of offense for the Rams. So I think it will work. I don't trust their O-line. And that was, again, big reason why Jalen Carter got in the backfield. And I love their front four on defense. They have one of the most dominant young front fours that is going to wreak havoc for years to come. I still don't trust their back seven. So those issues still exist. So they had to sacrifice a few things to keep Stafford around, because they had to pay him a little bit too. I just think that there is so much room. This team needs a lot to go right. Needs a lot of things to kind of bend their way to reach that ceiling. And I think if you're a team that really does need those things to happen in order for you to reach your ceiling, then there's a pretty good chance you're not going to hit your ceiling, because it's the NFL. You're not going to get everything you want to happen in the season all the time. It happens to certain teams, and we'll talk about them later on this pod. But I think that I just don't think. I think they won in 2020. The Rams did, or 2021. They got their lightning in a bottle moment, and I think with 37-year-old Matt Stafford, with back issues, I'm really, really worried about the long-term success of this team this year.
Yeah, and you nailed something that stands out the most with this team, and that's that offensive line. Regardless of who's back there, neither one of those two in Matt Stafford and Jimmy G have wheels. They don't have good sack escapability. We know that about them at this point. And so the fact that pretty much any D-line has a good chance at getting through that O-line, and that's just the cold-hearted truth, I worry about whoever's taking snaps there at quarterback, because I think they're going to get hit a lot. So this team, again, I have them going 10-7. It'll be interesting. Again, this whole division, and we'll talk about the Niners here in a second, it feels like a lot of them have to have a lot go right for them to have an elite level ceiling or season. Right. Which, ceiling would be like the 12 wins, 11 wins, right? And even that, like, I don't think anybody's scraping 14, 15 wins. Like, it's just not going to happen. Not this year. And this was one of the better divisions in football just 5-6 years ago. Right. It's just wild to see now how it's aged out and how you've seen kind of the retooling effect with this division. So let's talk about the Niners now, because obviously that's my favorite team. We got the boys over here, and look, we talked all off season. We talked about it when the Niners season ended last year. This is a retooling year. And while I would love to sit here and tell you like they're going 16-1, 17-0, and they're going to go all the way to the Super Bowl and win it, that's just not reality. The reality is there's going to be a lot of young players on this team that are going to see time that is going to be very valuable to them this year. They're going to make a lot of mistakes, and there's going to be a lot of growing moments. And there's still holes, especially when you look at the wide receiver room, when you look at the offensive line, when you look at the depth in the secondary. Like there's holes in this roster that still stand out, and obviously they've addressed some of those. But the wide receiver thing to me is kind of the scariest to me, and we'll get into that next week, I think, as we prepare for Week 1 Seahawks, but. This wide receiver room is not pretty right now. And the only thing that we've got going is the running back room to kind of carry that load. Obviously, with the addition of, Brian Robinson and now, you have essentially what is definitely a top three running back room in the NFL. You can argue it's the best. That's going to be a major factor, is CMC's health this year. Are you going to stay healthy all season long? Is Kyle Shanahan actually going to utilize Brian Robinson the way he should utilize him and keep CMC as healthy as can be throughout the season? Probably not. Right. History says otherwise with Kyle Shanahan. So these are the biggest questions I ask myself when I'm predicting kind of their, schedule and seeing how things have shaped out. So last year you finished 6-11, a lot to do with injuries. I mean, most banged up team in football. Currently, still dealing with injuries. Offensively, the Niners, I think they're going to be fine. Like I said, especially leaning in that 1-2 punch of CMC and Brian Robinson. How quickly will that wide receiver room get healthy is a big thing for me. And then will it stay there? Will this O-line be able to do enough to lift the offense? Are we going to have Purdy running for his life? Are we going to have too many, issues where Purdy's, in panic mode and trying to make a play out of nothing? Because you have younger wide receivers that might not have that experience in coming back to the football. So the biggest question to me is is can we stay healthy this season? If the 49ers stay healthy, I think their ceiling is 13-4. And that's massively to do with their schedule. This is the easiest schedule in football by strength of schedule. There's a lot of benefits, especially in the rest advantage. It's the first time I've been able to say it's a rest advantage and not a disadvantage. Aside from that, like, you still got some damn good players on this team. You still got George Kittle. You still got Christian McCaffrey. You still got Brock Purdy, who's absolutely capable. Brandon Ayuk, you're going to get him back at some point. Juwan Jennings, how long is that calf going to keep him out? On the other side of the football, you still got Freddie. You still got Bosa. You've got Michael Williams now. In the secondary, you're leaning on Diamador Lenore. So there are playmakers at almost every level, but it's the guys behind him, the guys behind those guys that I'm wary of. And I like how the 49ers have structured this team. I like how they built it. If I was doing it on Madden, I would probably do it pretty similarly, but I would have put a little bit more maybe into those lines, into the offensive and the defensive line. I do think that their biggest improvements came from the defensive line, but even still, some questions. So I again have them going 11-6. That was my long-winded explanation for why I believe they're going to win the NFC West. I think that they're just a little more equipped, and again, that schedule is the biggest thing going to carry them through it. So 11-6. What do you got?
I had them at 12-5 originally, and I would I'm me. I'm a vibes guy, right? So I think the vibes I received in that last preseason game when Jake Moody and his family were getting booed by Niners fans were not great. And I was like 12-5. This was after Jake Moody had that 5-6 game, and we watched him hit that game winner. We're like, oh, he's back. Like, we're good. We bought into preseason, and it didn't end up that great. And I know everyone says it was windy, all this stuff. It doesn't matter. I just think that I thought that was going to get you guys a couple wins. Now 12-5 feels a little tough because I'm afraid now that special teams is going to get in the way. Especially, and like the question is, let's say Moody starts off terrible. Okay, then you replace him. Then at that point, it's just like, why didn't you do it when the signs have clearly been in front of you? You guys, pulled, ripped the Band-Aid off on a third overall pick. You can do it on a third round kicker at this point. Like, we're a little far removed at this point. So that part bugged me a little bit, but it's going to be more than the kicker. I do think that overall this team improved. I also think that the Niners, the rest disadvantage switch over for them cannot be stated enough, because the Niners, with how successful they have been during this stretch, the past 2 years before this year, so the past two seasons, 23 and 24, they were at like a -20 rest disadvantage for both years. And you're coming off of a Super Bowl loss, and you're coming off of an NFC Championship loss. Like, you guys went deep, you still were hurt, and you still found your way back. So I think having a +9 rest advantage this year is huge. That's fourth in the league. Sorry. I think that'll be huge. Plus the easiest schedule. You guys are going to be allowed room for error. It's not like, and again, we have the easiest schedule by far, the Niners do, but it's like, that doesn't mean that these games are going to be cookie cutter. The Niners still have to show up and play good ball. And Purdy's still going to have to shoulder some of that load. But it will be, the question is, like you said, is like, which receivers are we really going to see with Brock? How much reps are they going to get with him? Will they consistently stay healthy? It looks like if Pearsall can build off of what he did in preseason and just stay healthy, it looks like Brock's going to look to him early and often while he gets some of his other guys back. And the Juwan thing, I really do wonder, like, now that it's kind of, the contract stuff has kind of been stated. I know John Lynch earlier said that there's no further talks right now happening there. So I just wonder if he's just saying, hey, dude, like, you had your shot, you got hurt, shut up and ball for now, and, let's see, earn that money again. So it's like they're in a spot where they really can, like that's why I think with this whole division, like we have brought up, like, it is going to be a slugfest. I don't think it's going to be pretty. I think everyone has this division kind of close together, and I would think that some people are kind of giving the Niners first by default, because when you go, everyone in this division might split with each other, and everyone might just like not be that great. They might struggle against some of these tough teams and look really good. and it's just going to be it's a retool year for everybody. And I think that like the Rams are on the tail end of Stafford. You guys are just on the beginning of the Brock Purdy extension era now, and I think you guys needed this retooling year to have a weaker schedule, to integrate younger guys. And so, like, it was kind of like if you guys dealt with all these injuries and all this stuff, you were due for something. Like, so it's nice to kind of get this level of a schedule. The questions will arrive in the playoffs, whether or not the Niners played enough tough competition to match the playoff that, strength they're about to go into. Right. But the Niners have experience. They have guys who have been there, done that before, including their QB, their coach, and their main defensive guys. So if they were to get in, they're still a team that I think you wouldn't want to face, because if the Niners are living up to their ceiling, then they're really a team you don't want to face, because they are firing on all cylinders. If the Niners are firing on all cylinders, they are one of the most dangerous teams in the NFL. I think they're a sleeping giant in waiting, just, trying to get a few more pieces until they really hit that next stage for them.
Yeah, and that's 100% it. Like, from that perspective, it was a W off season, right? I really couldn't have pictured this off season going too much better, aside from just staying healthier, especially in training camp and preseason. But from the team building standpoint, like I was saying, it's just this team is in a really good spot. They've retooled properly. They've retooled and set themselves up in a way where they aren't leaning on so much youth that you're going to be a 4-win football team, but you're not leaning on so many veterans that you're going to be missing out on potential youth for next year. And that, what I'm meaning by that is you get to lean on some of these young guys while you also have the core veterans to hold things down, and you get a better idea of who you want to roll forward with on your football team next year. And as you build, this next window for the Super Bowl. So this was a really good offseason for the Niners. I love what they did, and really just benefiting now from their schedule, benefiting from the situation, benefiting from, the unfortunate parts of the other injuries around the division as well, and just the unknowns with other teams. Like, this is, I feel pretty confident that the Niners would be a strong candidate to go from last to first, which you brought an interesting stat to my attention. So I'm trying to remember that one. Was it that it's never happened?
So since I don't know exactly what year this is, because they called it the realignment. So since the realignment, the NFC West has not had a team go from worst in the division the one year to the first to the following season. So that's kind of like the NFC East trend, where they haven't had a repeat winner in a sense, but only in the sense that, so the Niners, the odds are technically stacked against them in that sense from a history standpoint.
That to me is fun and interesting, because, then you start questioning, like, well, can the Niners, come over the history hump there? Because, history has proven that history tends to not, go the other way and lean the other way. So, there's interesting questions with this entire division. To see how it's going to shake down is going to be wild. And again, you nailed it. It's a slugfest. It's not a home run type slugfest. It's a, who gets out the gates quickest in this snail race. Because this is a division with too many questions. We talked about scenarios for all four of these teams, saying this has to, and this has to go perfectly for them if they want to hit their ceiling, and their ceiling isn't elite, and they're not hitting 14 wins. I don't see a single team in this division hitting 14 wins. And to me, like, the Rams hype, which was going on obviously sooner or earlier when the Matt Stafford thing was a little unknown, I just wasn't buying it, because I'm like, there's so many new pieces around this entire division. There's going to be a buffer period where they need to figure stuff out. And that's going to be a major factor too, with how quickly one of these teams can come out the gates and kind of attack their schedule is going to be big on how they do throughout the season.
Yeah, I think there's, in any simulation that I've had, and I think some people would argue there's going to be two, but I think that there is only going to be one team that comes out of the NFC West this year. I think it'll just be one. I think the NFC, I think in the NFL, the middle of the NFL is finally starting to kind of come together in this consistent little group. So I think the NFC North is going to be too good this year in the NFC. So I think that, the spoiler, that's going to have potentially 3 playoff teams in my opinion. And I think But I do think the Niners have the best chance because of the schedule and just kind of their situation. The pressure around them isn't what it was, and I think there is a little bit of pressure on the Rams to, hey, Matt Stafford's time is running out. Like, let's try. This is it. So we'll see if they can stay healthy, but that's the thing. So it's kind of the case for everyone in this division. So that's why you guys are just going to stay all stay together, and it's going to be competitive, and it's going to be interesting. I think we're gonna be week 17, week 18, and it's going to be like, oh man, like this is it. Like we'll see which division game clinches the NFC West.
Absolutely. All right, so we move on to the NFC East.
Yes, my domain.
Do it.
So, unlike you, we just talked about the whole history aspect for the 49ers. Will they, won't they break it? The NFC East, there has not been a repeat winner for 21 years running now. And the Eagles obviously winning the division last year and winning the Super Bowl. Will they be able to? I think if there has been ever a time for a repeat winner in the NFC East, it would be this year. So, for me, I had the NFC East like this, and I know for a fact we're gonna disagree, and I don't care. So it's gonna be fine. It's gonna be fine. Whatever. So I have the Eagles first, obviously 13-4. And just to reiterate, I think, or just to kind of walk back on it real quick, I think this is their ceiling. And then Washington in second, 9-8. Dallas 8-9, and this was also pre-Micah drama, and we'll talk about that in a second. And New York Giants at fourth, 5-12. So, what about you?
So I agree fully on the Cowboys and the Giants. I had those exact same records, 8-9 and 5-12.
Eagles 15-1, right?
No, not quite. I will start with the Eagles. I have them at 12-5, and they're not my division winners for the East. It's going to be 22 straight years in my book. But I also have the Commanders at 12-5. I just have them getting that the 2 late games in the season and getting a tiebreaker over you guys.
Okay, so I want to circle back to the Commanders here in a little bit. Let's start with the lower end here, because I do think there is some interesting conversation here. And I think specifically with the New York Giants, I want to start there. 5-12. They probably are actually going to go 5-12, and it's through no faults of their own. Like, they have the hardest schedule in the NFL. And the same, so the NFC East and the NFC North have the collection, those 8 teams kind of have the hardest grouping of schedules because of who we're playing.
Just a little bit of insight. They play the Chiefs, the Chargers, the Niners, the Packers, the Vikings, their division rivals, and the Broncos.
Right. So it's like the NFC East plays the AFC West and the NFC North this year, arguably the 2 toughest divisions in the NFL this year. And that's going to be a lot of the case for my argument for some of these teams, right? I think that New York had one of the most fun preseason. I'm a vibes guy. The vibes are up in New York. You got Jameis eating W's off of Jackson Dart's hands. Like, it was a pretty crazy preseason for the New York Giants. And I think it's a great feeling. And but I also think that, for the Jackson Dart hype, I think the team is handling it perfectly. The fans obviously are going to want to push a certain kind of narrative of like, oh, let Dart start, let Dart do this. Dart's not playing anytime this year outside of injury. I think even if Russ goes down in some way, they're playing Jameis first. They're really going to let Dart. I think they want to build this team so Dart can adopt a better team. And I think they have a good team. They have good pieces. Malik Neighbors is going to push his way into the top 5 conversation if he can stay healthy. He's already shown early on, he only has 1 year, but he's been dealing with injuries. And this is the same thing during the preseason too. He's been dealing with injuries. So can he stay healthy? If he is, he's one of the best receivers in the league already. So, and that defensive front is so hard to ignore. And Abdul Carter is a beast, dude. He looks insane. So you put him next to Sexy Dex and freaking Brian Burns and Kayvon Thibodeau, who they can also use as a trade piece. Thibodeau's name's been thrown out there. So there's a chance for the, Giants to, have addition by subtraction. And normally I love crapping on the Giants, but that's as is one of the Eagles fans' favorite hobbies to do. But I think that it is hard to ignore kind of what they put together here. And I do think that the Giants have always been competent. They just have not had good quarterback play for the past 4 years. And I think with Russell Wilson, say what you want. He's a cornball. He can do whatever. He is an experienced NFL quarterback that is a significant upgrade over anything that they've had in the past couple years. If you're saying that Russell Wilson is anywhere near Daniel Jones, he's not. So he's not. So he might be washed, but he's better than Daniel Jones. So I think that like his ability to run an offense is like Daboll has always had good defenses behind him. They have the front four to disrupt. Their back seven still remains a question. They're young, unproven, but I think their safety situation is really good. I think they have the guy from Miami, Javon Holland. That's the guy. Yeah. So Adebo, yeah. So that's a good safety duo, but their corners unproven. So I think that, I think the Giants have a lot of great pieces here, but it's that schedule. It does them so dirty. They're playing everyone. I don't understand how, a fourth place schedule treats them like this. So it was, or a third place, even if it was, but like it's rough. So everyone in the NFC East has a rough schedule this year, but for the Giants, it's just like for a team that's looking to build, I just think their ceiling could be 7, maybe. That's if everything goes their way. But I also think for all you Dart fans out there, I would pump the brakes. He was exciting. A lot of guys have had good preseasons too. Let the kid grow. This is a bad team. You don't want to see him going up against the Chiefs and the Eagles. You don't want him taking these L's now. Give him a competitive team so then he can grow. But that's how I'm feeling on the Giants.
Well, you also don't want him getting blown up in his rookie year and, having UCL issues and so on. Yeah. So, we agreed, 5-12 and yeah, they had a good offseason. They really did. I think they're kind of heading in the right direction now. I'm not sure if you mentioned him, but Cam Skatibo, hometown kid over here. And I think all the additions, Chauncey Golston, Abdul Carter in the draft, Jackson Dart, Cam Skatibo, and then obviously picking up Javon Holland and Paulson Adebo, like they're heading in the right direction in terms of, finding some actual team building and something to kind of get behind. But that schedule is going to be it's just the worst time for this kind of thing to happen. If they had like a Niners type schedule, I could dead ass see them winning like 7 games, like 8 games. And it would be like, the Giants are back. Like keep an eye on them for next year because they just need this piece, that piece, a few other things, and they're good to go. But I think this year is going to be a little rough because you're going to get blown out a lot. You're going to lose a lot, I think. And I think it's, if you can kind of just strike it to, well, it's the schedule. We're a young team. We're still developing. We're still rebuilding. If you can chalk it to that, good. You're in the right headspace. But if you're expecting this team to compete right now, if you're expecting Jackson Dart to be your quarterback by week 5, I just don't expect that happening.
Yeah, and so I had the Cowboys 8-9 and the Giants 5-12. There is a world in my head where I could see these two teams switching places.
Whoa, the Cowboys at 5-12.
Yes, and we'll talk about that in literally a second. But the last point on the Giants, I do think their defense is going to keep them competitive this year. To have a dominant front four makes up for a lot of issues that you might have on the back end, and they have I don't know a front four that's better. I'm not going to try and be a homer or anything like that, but collectively, a better foursome of pass rushers or guys who can stop the run. I like what the Giants have, and I think that there's an opportunity for this defense to keep them in games, to cause havoc. And I think that with that veteran experience from Russ, I think that might keep them in some games. But again, a lot of things need to go their way. Malik Neighbors needs to stay healthy. They have no one else besides Malik Neighbors at the moment. And I'm not trying to diss anyone on the Giants. They have other roster pieces, but they can upgrade at every other position on that wide receiver unit. So it's not that's just, they have room to grow still. And I do think that where they're really solid at is their defense. And I think their defense might be able to, if there's a team that might overachieve and surprise this year, it might be the Giants. So now we talk about the Cowgirls. And I think that right now they're the weirdest team to talk about because they're the only remaining contract situation of this magnitude that's lingering. But it's weird. CD was the week before the season started, and Dak was literally the day of the season last year, the first game of the season. I just don't know how they don't pay Micah. I don't know how this ends with Micah not signing with the Cowboys. He could request a trade. He's on that team for 3 more years. Like, has to be. There's nothing he can do. He's not going to sit out for 3 years. He might, yeah.
Jerry's not going to trade.
Right. And he might sit out this year, and Jerry might trade him if, the right package happens. But I also think that Jerry's like, dude, even with you this year, we're not winning. We're not winning ish. Like, we're not winning anything. Like, I'm sorry. Like, Micah makes this team 8-9. I have them at their ceiling. I think Dak, George Pickens, CeeDee Lamb, they're going to be great. They don't have a rushing offense. If they're going to try and rely on Miles Sanders, Javonte Williams, and rookie Jaden Blue, with an offensive line that has potential, but they are dealing with some injuries too. And they lost some guys via retirement and just in general. So they're going to have some growing pains, and they're going to work for Dak. Dak's going to have huge numbers this year, so long as his 2 receivers stay healthy. And I like Jake Ferguson too. I think he's a great tight end for that system. And as a receiving tight end, I think he brings a lot. That defense isn't anything without Micah. They have, Trayvon Diggs is still hurt too. They drafted well. I like Donovan Ezraku. I was high on him coming out of the draft, so we'll see if he develops in anything nice. They drafted a corner, Siobhan Ravel. He was one of the higher up ones, but he was coming off of an injury and he's still hurt. So, to ask Deron Bland to come back and he was hurt. Like, they have a lot of guys who were contributing who were hurt. So without Micah, they're a 5-12 team. And that's kind of where I see it. Like, their offense will be consistent enough to win them games, but they're not going to be the powerhouse they were. Dak is inefficient. He's a good quarterback, but he is trending downwards. And maybe with, the addition of Pickens and the best duo that he's had here, maybe that elevates his game for 1 more or 2 more years. But I'm also not sure. The Steelers have a wide receiver curse that anyone who leaves the Steelers, who was on the Steelers, plays really poorly. So who knows if that continues with Pickens, who was a crash out while he was in Pittsburgh anyway. So, the Cowboys, they're in a weird spot. They paid guys that they shouldn't have. They let things drag on. I don't see why this is a bad thing for Micah if they're letting it drag on, because you're making more money by the day. You're going to get paid and your price goes up. So if Jerry really wants to hold it out, he gave Dak the most money ever. He gave CD a super high contract. He's going to make you the highest defensive play player. He already put out an offer where you were the highest paid defensive player, but apparently it's a little bit more than the money. So I don't know why. Maybe it's the Cowboys trying to cause drama because they're the Cowboys. So that's the part where I'm like, it's always smoke and mirrors with this team. I never know. So that's just how I feel about it.
Weird. I mean, watching every offseason for this team unfold, it's always storyline and not in the good way, it seems like. It's funny too, because I do like George Pickens. I think on this team, it's not bad. Like him and CD, Dak, the problem is you just have 0 run game. And that's massive because everybody can sit back and expect you to pass the ball 40 times. And it's going to be fine because, as long as we cover the pass game and make Dak feel uncomfortable, they're not going to do anything on the ground against us. So this team is hilarious to watch. Jerry's world is always just a blast. I enjoy watching it. It makes me feel good about the way the 49ers handle business. Yep. I have them going 8-9. Like I said, their floor to me, I don't see like a 5-12. I just feel like there's too much individual talent on this team, fully healthy, to say that they're 5-12. I have their floor set at like 7-10. And then ceiling is actually where I struggle the most. And I just couldn't see myself going above 11 wins. And even that felt harsh. Like that felt too high. I feel like 10 wins probably felt right. But I'm going to say it's 11 because they still have a lot of the core pieces that they did when they were an elite team just a few short years ago. It's a matter of, trying to get back to kind of the shape you were in that time frame and trying to get the vibes up. You're a big vibes guy. I understand the vibes. I feel it. The vibes are not there right now. Yeah. If you can kind of early on find some success, win some games that you maybe otherwise shouldn't, and, kind of develop your own good vibes, then this could be a better season for them. But I think it's safer to bet that this team's going to be pretty mid, is sitting at like 8 and 9.
Yeah, I think the other element to it too that I don't think we addressed was Brian Schottenheimer. First time head coach. Yeah, he was their OC, but yeah, first time head coach of America's team, and it's the pressure is going to be on him right out of the gate. And I think that he'll be given a leash. I think Jerry's very prepared for this season to not be good and for him to figure something out along the way. But I think that Schottenheimer, I think, is trying to do the right things. I think he will has potential to be a good coach, but that is a very much we'll have to wait and see. Out of all the coaching hires that we had this offseason, I think that he's the least proven of the group. So I think that with that, the Cowboys are just kind of all over the place to me. And there's another question too, another underrated aspect of their quarterback room of not having Cooper Rush anymore. And I think Cooper Rush, he got them wins for multiple years when Dak has been out. He's had to sit out both the past 2 years. So I think that there's an element of, we saw kind of what Joe Milton, their second guy, did in the preseason, and it was very inconsistent. So I think if you had to rely on that for a consistent amount of time, even if he yes, he was throwing to backup. So maybe CD and George Pickens can handle his, piss missiles that he throws. But I think that there's going to be a drop off, and you don't want to live in a world where Joe Milton needs to play 10 games for you. So there is an aspect of can you protect Dak, and can he make it this season healthy? That's a huge factor for them too. He's healthy now, but he's always healthy to start the year. I'm very curious to see if he can stay healthy too. So let's talk about the team that we disagreed on the most, had the largest spread. The Commanders. So I want to hear why you think, 12-5. This is a world that I know a lot of people are in right now, and I kind of want to get a sense for that world because I don't see it. So tell me what's.
It's all hype, bro. I mean, if I'm being real, it's hype. The biggest thing for me is a personal thing. I love Debo. I've always loved Debo. He was one of my favorite players while he was on the 49ers. I love what he brings to a locker room. I love the mentality in pregame and postgames. He is a guy you want in your locker room. He holds you accountable. He kind of expects a certain, style and level of play. And that in and of itself isn't nothing to me. So that hits a little deeper for me. But looking at this team, look what they did last year. You can call it what you want. NFC Championship loss with a terrible O-line, questionable defense, inconsistent run game, but they were able to put it all together and went further than, really anybody expected or had them put going. Jaden Daniels having this historic rookie season is something that, if he has another level to him, which I believe he does, that is something you absolutely build upon and something that makes your team a lot better. Defensively, they were only good at stopping the pass game. They were third in the NFL, but the run defense was one of the worst in the NFL. And that to me, if you're able to stop the run a little bit more this season, and your pass defense is still good, I don't think it's going to be third in the NFL. I think they benefited a lot from some drop passes and some kind of situations that played out for them, especially pass interference calls offensive pass interference calls that weren't really. But anyway, trading for Laramie Tunzel to boost the O-line. Like I said, Deebo Samuel, drafting Josh Connolly, I think that was a great pick. The thing with them is they're not going to surprise anybody. You kind of expect this team now to be good, and last year it was the element of surprise. That I feel like is out the window. So that's kind of the biggest thing for me to keep an eye on with this team. But, even with the cards kind of stacked against them in that regard, they see the Lions, the Broncos, the Packers, the Falcons, the Chiefs, the Chargers. Obviously, they see the Eagles twice. So it's going to be a tough season for them. But it's a lot of gut based on just kind of how this team was able, from a vibe standpoint, to go to the NFC Championship game, find themselves, blown out or not, but in the last dance to go to the big dance is something that you can kind of build upon. And I think that they really applied that this offseason.
I think so I want to preface this. I want to start this off by giving respect where respect is due. I think it's easy for us Eagles fans to dismiss anybody who, says anything about us, right? But I do think that the Commanders did a hell of a job getting to the last four, getting a shot at the Super Bowl and a chance to do something that most teams don't get to do that early under a rookie quarterback. They were, in that season, they had the number 2 overall pick in the draft. They had that bad of a record for a reason. They were 8-2 in one-score games this year. A bunch of those games that they won were incredibly suspect. You get a wonderful Hail Mary. You get a drop pass by Malik Neighbors against the Giants. You get a dropped pass by Devontae Smith in a game where Jalen Hurts was out in the first quarter, but you guys love to say that, you guys beat the Eagles that day, so that's fine. Whatever you want to do. But to respect what they did, they beat the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in the wild card round on the road. They did beat the 15-2 Detroit Lions on the road in the divisional round with the Lions coming off of a week of rest, despite the Lions not having any of their defense and the Bucs not being a good defensive team last year. Like, they got to, I think everything that could possibly have gone right for any single team went the Washington Commanders' way. I think there's an element that they overachieved. I think that last year, with the expectations that Jaden Daniels is the number 2 overall pick, they're the number 2 overall team for a reason at this point. That had they just went 7-10, 6-11 last year, there would still be a level of like, oh, this team has room to grow. So I think that what if we saw their ceiling last year? And I also think that to expect this team to immediately improve off of 12-5 is a tough ask when last year you gave a rundown of the schedule for this year. Last year, they only played 4 teams that were in the playoffs last year. They benefited from having a last place schedule. Very much like other teams who struggle, they get a weaker schedule. So I just think that there's an element of now they have to prove it. But I also think that, yes, they did get better on offense. I do think Laramie Tunsil is an improvement over what they had. Sam Cosmi is hurt, but when he comes back, he is an excellent guard. And I like that Josh Connerly kid. I like what they have. Laramie Tunsil's an improvement. He was the most penalized offensive tackle last year on a bad Houston Texans O-line. So that is something to monitor. Maybe the change of scenery is good for him, right? And Debo, I was super low on Debo when he came. But now from what I've seen and what I've heard, I think the vibes would have been horrible this offseason with all the Terry drama if they didn't have a Debo as their veteran presence all summer.
I agree.
I think that's an underappreciated fact. I think Debo kind of was the glue, like the new guy glue. He's like, don't worry about the contract, guys. I've been here before. Like, it's going to be good. Like, I think there's an element of that kept the team calm throughout the preseason of like, Terry's going to get done. We got Debo. Let's build with him first. We already know what Terry's going to do. So I will buy up the stock on Debo. I was higher on him than when they originally made the move. And I think their offense is going to be incredible this year. I think Jaden Daniels is the best quarterback in the division. I think in terms of just pure, potential and talent, right? Like that's the vibe, right? Like he is a special game-changing player. He will elevate this team on his own. And he did it last year. And I don't think that was a fluke. I don't think what he did was fluky. And I think they have the potential to be the number 1 offense this year if Debo stays healthy and they can use him as a gadget player now that they have Terry. And then they are really high on their rookie running back. We'll see how he does. Corey Crosby Merritt. I apologize. I know he goes by Bill Merritt, so I apologize if I said it wrong there. And with Austin Eckler there too. They still have Zach Ertz. They still have like veteran presence, and they have a reliable O-line. So like, there's no reason for this offense to fall off a cliff when they were an incredibly efficient offense, and the best 3rd and 4th down team in the league. I think this offense will be explosive. It's the defense I don't believe in. And your best players are awesome linebacking core. I like Bobby Wagner and Frankie Louvu. They were incredibly efficient last year. But how much of Bobby Wagner is he going to have left? Can we expect him to have another 150-plus tackle season again? They've signed Von Miller. Okay. This would have been cool 5 years ago, but I don't know what 38-year-old Von Miller is going to do, even as an occasional pass rusher. I don't think he has that juice. If you're telling me that this version of Von Miller is going to take on Lane Johnson or Jordan Mailata, I'm not worried in the slightest. So it's one of those things that and then Javon Kinlaw was a talked about move. They paid him $45 million. I don't know about that. Like, you lose Jonathan Allen, you have Deron Payne, he's awesome, but it's like, and on the corner side, on paper they look great and they improved. I like Sanders still. They got Jonathan Jones from the Patriots. Like, I like that for their slot depth. And Trey Amos, I was high on him coming out of the draft too. I would have totally taken him. But Lattimore I think is overrated, but that's only because he's AJ Brown's son. So I think that it's, every other team but the Eagles, the Commanders really have played well against. And I am very curious to see this year how, when they play 8 playoff teams instead of 4, how does it look for them? How consistent, how often do things go their way this year? And they are also a Jaden Daniels injury away from not being a good team.
Yeah,
and
that's very true.
They're also a Terry McLaurin injury away from not being a good team. I think that, like, they are reliant on their guys. Terry has stayed healthy, so that isn't a thing that I'm actually worried about. But, like, if that happens, if they lose Debo, it's different. They've already built an offense around Terry. Debo's the new addition. But if you're relying on Debo to be your number one guy, and this was the conversation before Terry signed, I didn't think that, that was going to be sustainable. But with both of them, and Debo looking and playing the way that he is now, I think we'll see. And I know I've been going off kind of on this little, thing here. One last thing I want to address, and then I'll send it back your way. Their schedule doesn't do them any favors. Like, not just difficulty, but rest. They have the 3rd worst rest disadvantage this year. They're minus 13. They're one of 3 teams in the teens with the Saints and the Raiders. They didn't do the Commanders any favors. They have the latest international game this season, which is week 11. They come back and they enter a bye, but that bye week isn't a normal bye week. You're recovering from international travel, and you don't get it out of the way early in the season like the Eagles did last year. And this will be the first time this team has kind of done that, and this will be the first game in Spain, so that's cool. But I wonder about that so late into the season. And then I just don't know. I just don't know if I believe in, like, I also believe that there is an element of, hey, we surprised everybody last year. Nobody thought we were going to be this freaking good. And now everyone knows kind of what you can bring to the table, and you still have weaknesses, dude. Like, you can still get ran all over. Like, if your goal was to catch up to the Eagles, you went from 55-23 to 48-28. That's how it feels like to me right now. Like, I respect what they've done, and I think that they've grown, but I don't think it's unreasonable to believe that there is going to be a chance of a drop off if some of the things that went their way last year didn't. And they can still be a good team. 10-7. They could still be 12-5. I could see a world of 12-5, but I think with their schedule and all these kind of things that are, like, I think people aren't paying enough attention to. They're just like, Jaden Daniels is amazing. Yay. Like, they'll be fine. I think that, like, the clouds their vision a little bit. We have the shiny fun quarterback. And again, he also was dealing with a rib injury last year. There is an element of, like, can he truly make it a whole season? So, no. Okay. That was it for me.
So you did your homework.
A little bit.
I looked at some of the stuff that you pointed out. Other things, I'm like, oh, well, that's really fair. Yeah, I have them at their ceiling, which is the 12-5, which matches their record of last year. And I get that they're playing harder teams this year than they were last year. For me, though, I just, I feel like from a standpoint of this team has kind of been searching for an identity for so long. They found one last year, and they rode a extremely high into the playoffs and rode that as far as getting blown out into the NFC Championship game. But even after, the vibes were up because it was like we weren't supposed to be here and we're here. Like, they're still very much in a retooling stage. They have more pieces needed, I think, to win a Super Bowl. But they're also in a point where it's like, I don't know. And I could be just driving the hype train as well. Because again, like, Debo is a big part of it. I do really like Jaden Daniels. I think, when last season, when Brandon Ayuk was talking about going over there, I didn't initially buy the hype. I was like, I don't know what BA is seeing over in Jaden in Washington. Like, he'll be good. I don't think he's going to be that good. And then obviously coming out and playing one of the best rookie seasons in football. I like what Washington's doing. I like that team. It's a team I'm going to be watching this year, somewhat closely because I think they've got an opportunity to be fun. And at the same time, they've got an opportunity to fall off a cliff. So like, it's kind of two different worlds where it's like, which way is this Commanders team going to fall? And how are the cards going to lay? And, how do they play their hand?
I think people just want to be the thing that I guess the thing that gets me with this team, right, is that I don't mind the hype behind this team. But I do think, like you mentioned, they're a few pieces away from being a Super Bowl team. But I think everyone's just trying to be early on the Washington Commanders to the Super Bowl hype train. Like they want to be the first ones to kind of hop on it, right? Because it's all there for them. But I do think they're just a few steps away. The Super Bowl team is in your division. It's just not the Commanders. And I think the Commanders are that next tier. They have elevated themselves into that tier like the Packers, I would say even at this point, like the Niners if they're peaking, and even the Rams, the way people talk about the Rams. Like they're in that tier. The Commanders are they can punch above their weight. They can beat a 15-2 Detroit team. They can beat the Bucs. Like they can beat their contemporaries. And say what they want about how they beat the Eagles in their second meeting, but in a mental space, you beat the Eagles. Like that helps. So I think that they'll get their puncher's chance at the end of the year, and maybe we're talking about this division being decided in those last 3 weeks when the Eagles play and the Commanders play each other twice. I do think it's kind of a disservice to the fans. I think that's I think if you wanted to start hot, you could have ran this game week 1 and it would have been incredible. Or you could have ran this game in the middle of the year and it like they did last year, and it was a very highly contested, talked about game and a primetime spot. So I think that like getting them towards the end of the year when there is a possibility that if one of these two teams gets hot, then there's really nothing to compete for by the end of the year, or it won't matter as much to whoever is ahead. I think that, possibly, who knows? It could be a slugfest to the very end, and these two teams might need these games. So that is something that I don't like when they push those division games against the two potentially best teams in the division that late in the season.
It's fair.
So that's my little spiel on the Commanders. Again, Commanders fans, I respect you guys. I hate the way you talk about the Eagles and how easy you guys think you can beat them, and I appreciate the confidence. Just wait, we'll get there. And so the Eagles, I had them 13-4, you had them 12-5. I think there's reasonably fair to say, hey, the Eagles have had this unparalleled level of health and success, Howie season, all this fun stuff. Now we can put all these Jalen Hurts conversations to bed. Can he win the Super Bowl? Can this team do it? They did it. So for me, it's, there's not much more. They're the Super Bowl champs. We don't really need to get much into them outside of the fact that they're still a really good team. There's a lot of turnover, but that's mainly on the defensive side of the ball. And we didn't lose our defensive coordinator. So we still have Vic Fangio, and he has all the guys that he wants. And that's the key part about this. I'm not worried about who's back there because every guy that's back there is a Vic Fangio selected player. So I trust that he knows what he's going to be able to do. We're already getting wonderful returns on Jahad Campbell in terms of him actually not missing a single snap in preseason and actually being there the whole time. That's huge. And Makuba, yes, he's been hurt, but he's already showing flashes of what he can do, and there's a chance he'll be back week 1. We'll see. Our receiver room is probably as deep as it's ever been. And it's weird to say in terms of just that third, fourth, fifth guy. I think if you go around Eagles camp, all the beat reporters, the way they talk about this team, they have never felt more confident about the group of 5 that we've had. It hasn't been this deep before. And you still kept Dallas Goedert. There was a chance that he was going to be there. The O-line's awesome. And everyone can say what they want about Saquon. I still think he has the opportunity to have another good year. And he doesn't need to go for 2,000 yards again for it to be a good season. And Saquon talked about it today too. They asked him that question on WIP about, which is the Philadelphia local radio station, about the narrative that just because you had a good year last year, you're a running back, you're bound to get hurt this year and it's not going to work. He's like, I don't understand that narrative. I'm healthy. I feel great. My body, I haven't been dealing with injuries. And why not? We're still our team, our O-line, still our O-line. The system hasn't changed. He's like, it might not look the same this year, but that doesn't mean I can't have a good year. He's like, my goal was never to break the Dickerson record. My goal was just to win the Super Bowl. And I think that so long as this team, which feels so much more relaxed now that all this pressure is off of them now that they've done it. Now that they climbed the mountaintop and beat the Chiefs, all that. Like, yeah, they have a tough schedule, but everyone thinks that the Eagles are already better than all these other teams because they've proven that they can beat all these other teams. So I think the Eagles, it doesn't feel like they're, even if they regress, they'll probably regress to like 11-6, still be the most dangerous team that you don't want to see in the playoffs. And that's fine. And I think the Eagles have earned that right, being one of the most successful teams during these past 3 years. And, obviously I'm going to pick them to advance and, repeat. That'd be super cool, but they don't need to do that to validate what the players on this team are and how good they are and how special this run has been. But yeah, so the Eagles, for me, it feels more business as usual than ever. And I think we're kind of stepping into that true next step of a potential dynasty in the making that probably won't be, but like you get to step into that realm of like, this is what this team could be. We enter that Chiefs level territory of like success. So I think, vibes are up. It's just a matter of, can we stay healthy, which is a question, but I think that's a question for everybody. But when healthy, I think we're still the best team in the NFC.
My only thing is the, and I'll kind of bounce off the when healthy part. The starters really haven't seen a ton of run time throughout the preseason and training camp. And that to me is like a tad bit, worrying because for obvious reasons, like you want your guys to be meshing and ready to go come week one. This AJ Brown injury, keeping him sidelined for, a month now. Yeah. It's there's some things there that you kind of look at and go, well, this could be kind of a rough start to the season. Schedule wise, yeah, you nailed it. Like it's not an easy schedule. You're seeing the Rams at home, which give or take could be an easy game. You never know. You don't know what version of the Rams you're getting. You see the Broncos, which the Broncos are being talked about as a Super Bowl contender right now. We talked about that last week. You see the Lions at home. You also see, in terms of away games, you have that matchup or rematch with the Chiefs. You see the Buccaneers. The Buccaneers are what seems like an odd kryptonite.
A thorn in my craw, bro. I hate these guys.
Such a weird kryptonite for no reason. And then you see the Packers, the Chargers, and the Bills. So there's tough games in there. And for me, I kind of struggled because the starter thing, getting back to it, and this is the biggest thing that I'm kind of bouncing in my head, not having hardly any runtime in the preseason games for these offensive starters. I'm worried about how quickly they can kind of get rolling and shake off some of the rest, because last year you saw the rocky start to last year. Mind you, it was coming off of a complete breakdown from the season prior, and there was a lot of high expectations of that team to rally and not start crappy, but they kind of started a little bit crappy. And, I remember Eagles fans calling for Sirianni to be fired and move on from Jalen, and then it all clicked. The question for me is, does it click in game one? How many weeks does it take? And that's the biggest thing for me, because you don't have a lot of time with this schedule.
Yeah, I think so. I think the way now, especially in the Sirianni era, now that we have enough data on him, I think ever since the 2021 preseason against Robert Saleh and the New York Jets, where Jalen got lit up and Nick Sirianni yelled at Saleh, and there was like, what the heck, dude? Like, ever since then, Sirianni's like, F this, starters do not play in the preseason. I think there's an element of, like, the Bengals slow starts, where the Eagles really do spend the month of September in preseason mode, and this is their time to gel, and this is their time to vibe. I think last year was different in the sense that there was the Kelsey turnover. Like, Jalen was officially asked to be the one to call protections and things like that. Like, it was his responsibility to handle a lot more. When I do think, people do forget that for two of those games he played two of those games without AJ, and he played one of those games, the Bucs games, without AJ and Devontae. And people were roasting him for not playing well when he was not. And again, that's a little bit of a revisionist history, because you only remember the details about him not being a good passer, or then worry about the passing offense and all that stuff, when in reality, it's like they were dealing with some injuries and preseason type issues where guys were getting warmed up during the season. So I think that Now we don't have an international trip this year. I think that's already going to be huge. We don't have back-to-back games at home, so that is something to, pay attention to. But we still are relatively good on the travel one because just based off of the positioning in the U.S., it helps us. And who we're playing this year. I just think that I think the Eagles. I think the injury stuff, from what I'm hearing, especially with AJ and stuff, I think a lot of these guys just are resting. I think the Eagles have, with how many times they've been in the playoffs in these 4 years, how far they've gone to 2 Super Bowls and stuff. These guys don't get the same level of rest that teams do for missing the playoffs after going deep. So I think that there is an element of AJ knows what he's doing. This offense isn't going to change with these starters. Nothing's changed once these guys come back. Lane's been taking multiple rest days during the weeks. I think that we'll see what happens with AJ. We're going to get this injury reports for all of our teams on Sunday. They do the first official injury report, and I think that'll be a clearer picture of just how serious this AJ Brown thing is. He's at practice every day. He's just doing fun stuff on the sideline, and he's in good spirits. I don't think there's any concerns with him over when you look at a Micah Parsons who just looks defeated half the time he's at Cowboys camp. So I think that there is an element of we're just waiting for the season and letting AJ get there.
I saw a clip of AJ throwing passes to some of the wide receivers. I thought that was pretty fun. Yeah, he was putting zip on that ball. It was a nice spiral.
He was throwing darts. That's been his thing. That's what he's been doing for the past week. Has been helping those guys out in those drills too. So he the vibes in the Eagles camp. All the leaders are just being leaders, and you're seeing guys I haven't even talked about Jalen Carter potentially taking that leap this year. And last year he did. The numbers won't back it up because he's getting triple teamed every play. He's receiving that treatment, and I think that there's an element of for the Eagles defense. I want y'all to remember we have 4 potential all pro players in that defense right now in Jalen Carter, Zach Bond, Cooper DeJean, and Quinyon Mitchell. Most teams don't have that at all. So I think when you have at every level of your defense, and Reed Blankenship is a very quality starter, when you have that kind of reliability at all facets on the defense, I trust that this team will be able to adjust and react to some of the talent that they've lost. So, it's easy to say the Eagles will struggle. They might, or it's easy to say that they'll be successful again, but it's also easy to say hey, they're due for some regression. And it's totally possible. They were 14-3 and they peeled off 17 of 18 games last year. That's going to be hard to repeat, and I don't expect that either. So it's just going to be one of those things where there's going to be bumps and bruises, but I think we've earned the right as a team to just say, just get us to the playoffs and we'll be good. Get us to the playoffs, get us healthy, and we'll be good.
Love it.
So I think that's going to be it for part 1 of the NFC Prediction Week podcast. I mean, guys, we're already an hour 16 in. This is going to be a 3-hour show at this point if we kept it up. So stay tuned, you guys. We're going to be right back for part 2, where we break down the NFC South, the NFC North, and then we give our playoff predictions for what we think is going to happen this year. All right, guys. So stay with us. This episode's going to come out on Thursday. And the next episode, part 2, is going to come out on Friday. So please, guys, stay tuned. We will talk to you on Friday.
Peace.
Peace.